Srimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON, Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Vidas Thakur Ki Jai. Friends, say Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai, Shri Shiva Krishna Govardhana Sayam Kundra Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Maturam Ki Jai, Jagannathaswami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Dalasade Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, we are reading from the first canto, chapter 18, text 14. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Dhamma Rasavit Katayam Mahatmai Kanta Parayanasya Nantam Gunanam Gunasya Jagmur Yogeshwara Baba Padma Mukyaha Gonamatripyen Rasavit Katayam Mahatmai Kanta Parayanasya Nantam Gunanam Agunasya Jagmur Yogeshwaraye Baba Padma Mukyaha Gonamatripyen Rasavit Katayam Mahatmai Kanta Parayanasya Nantam Gunanam Nagunasya Jagmur Yogeshwaraye Baba Padma Mukyaha Gonamatripyen Rasavit Katayam Mahatmai Kanta Parayanasya Nantam Gunanam Agunasya Jagmur Yogeshwaraye Baba Padma Mukyaha
Gonamatripya Rasavit Katayam Mahatmai Kanta Parayanasya Nantam Gunanam Agunasya Jagmur Yogeshwaraye Baba Padma Mukya
Gonamatripyat Rasavit Katayam Mahatma Kanta Paranasya Nantam Gunanam Agunasya Jagmur Yogeshwaraye Baba Padma Mukya
Gonamatripya Rasavit Katayam Mahatma Kanta Parayanasya Nantam Gunanam Agunasya Jagmur Yogeshwaraye Baba Padma Mukya
Ladies.
Gonamatripya Rasavit Katayam Mahatmai Kanta Parayanasya Nantam Gunanam Agunasya Jagmur Yogeshwaraye Baba Padma Mukya Vikhatayam Mahatamai Kanta Parayana Satsya Nangunamam Agunasya Jagmur Yogeshwaraye Bhavaparamukya
Right? Daha. Who is he? Nama. Specifically. Tripyat. Get full satisfaction. Rasavit. Expert in relishing mellow nectar. Gadayam. In the topics of Mahatma, the greatest amongst the living beings. Ekanta, exclusively. Parayanasya, of one who is the shelter of. Nam, never. Antam, end. Gunanam, of attributes. Aganasya, of the transcendence. Jagmuhu, could ascertain. Yogahishvaraha, the lords of mystic power. Yea, all they. Mava, Lord Shiva. Padma, Lord Brahma. Mukyaha, heads. Translation. The personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna Govinda, is the exclusive shelter for all great living beings, and his transcendental attributes cannot even be measured by such masters of mystic powers as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Can anyone who is expert in relishing nectar, ras, ever be fully satiated by hearing topics about him? You can repeat. The personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna Govinda, is the exclusive shelter for all great living beings, and his transcendental attributes cannot even be measured by such masters of mystic powers as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Can anyone who is expert in relishing nectar ras ever be fully satiated by hearing topics about him? So, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. John. Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are two chiefs of the demigods. They are full of mystic powers. For example, Lord Shiva drank an ocean of poison, of which one drop was sufficient to kill an ordinary living being. Similarly, Brahma could create many powerful demigods, including Lord Shiva. So they are Ishvaras, or lords of the universe. Just take some water. But they are not the supremely powerful, or supreme powerful. The supreme powerful is Govinda, Lord Krishna. He is the transcendence, and his transcendental attributes cannot be measured even by such powerful Ishvaras as Shiva and Brahma. Therefore, Lord Krishna is the exclusive shelter of the greatest of all living beings. Brahma is counted amongst the living beings, but he is the greatest of all of us. But why is the greatest of all the living beings so much attached to the transcendental topics of Lord Krishna? Because he is the reservoir of all enjoyment. Everyone wants to relish some kind of taste in everything. But one who is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord can derive unlimited pleasure from such engagement. The Lord is unlimited, and his name, attributes, pastimes, entourage, variegatedness, etc. are unlimited, and those who relish them can do so unlimitedly and still not feel satiated. This fact is confirmed in the Padma Purana. Ramante yogita vinante satyananda chirakmane iti ramapade naso param brahma vidhiyate. The mystics derive unlimited transcendental pleasures from the absolute truth, and therefore the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is also known as Rama. There is no end to such transcendental discourses. In mundane affairs there is the law of satiation, but in transcendence there is no such satiation. Sutta Goswami desired to continue the topics of Lord Krishna before the sages of Naimisharanya, and the sages also expressed their readiness to hear from him continuously. Since the Lord is transcendence and his attributes are transcendental, such discourses increase the receptive mood of the purified audience. Okay. So, ko namasutye rasavit kathayam Mahatmamai kanta parayanasya nantam gunanam agunasya jagmor yogeshvarye bhavapadma mukhyaha. So, umagana timadandasya gananjana shlakaya chakshurun medikam mena tasmai Shri Gurave Maha. So, let's talk about the Hare Krishna mantra, because the Hare Krishna mantra is Krishna Katha, the Bhagavatam is Krishna Katha, the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna Katha, and also, interestingly enough, talks about the service of Krishna, our Krishna Katha. Everything else is considered to be Gramya Katha. I mean, ordinary village talks. Sometimes we have to engage in some Gramya Katha just to be gentlemen and ladies, or ladies and gentlemen, as the case may be. But in general, we should try to engage in Krishna Katha, because Gramya Katha is one of the detrimental factors that take us away from Krishna consciousness. That is also called in the Upadeshamrita Prajalpa. Ajahara Prajalpa, Ajahara Vayasascha Prajalpa Nimagraha. So anyway, so these are the detrimental factors that take us away from Krishna. So, getting back to the point, let's talk about the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Now, generally, we're advised not to give any interpretation on the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It's considered one of the offenses of chanting, very way members. However, I'm going to give an interpretation and not commit an offense, hopefully, because there are bona fide interpretations, understandings of the Hare Krishna mantra, and there are unbona fide interpretations. Like an unbona fide interpretation would be that if you chant Hare Krishna, then the certain alpha waves or beta waves will increase or decrease, and in this way you're experiencing happiness. That's an unbona fide. Just like sometimes devotees, they want to establish the authenticity of chanting Hare Krishna, and they want to establish it in a laboratory setting, mundane laboratory setting, with someone who has electrodes hooked up to his brain to test the brainwave. So that's not the way, that's actually speculation. But there is a bona fide meaning, or many meanings, of the Hare Krishna mantra. So let's take the word Krishna before we take Hare. So Krishna is composed of two syllables, Krishna. And so Krish basically means to attract or to pull. Just like you have the statement in the Gita about Vaishyas, Krishigo Raksha Madhijam, Vaishya Dharma Svabhavajam. So a Vaishya is generally pulling things. Why is he pulling things? Anyone know?
Yeah.
Why?
trying to make money? He's pulling.
No. Krishna Gorakshava, a tractor.
Yeah.
With a bull. He's using a bull to pull a plow. That's why he's called Krishna Gorakshava. Because he's pulling. And of course, modern implement would be a tractor. But so actually, a Vaishya is using a tractor, but a natural tractor, which is a bull.
We are Vaishya, Maharaja.
What?
We are Vaishya. I am Vaishya.
Okay, so you should go out and use a tractor while you're on the altar. So, I'm just joking. No, but Nanda Maharaj is also Vaishya. That's good. Krishna Gorakshava young Vaishya commerce. Of course, the Vaishya also engages in commerce, trade. But Krishna, basically he's plowing the field. And so he's pulling. So Krish, in the word Krishna, means what? To pull or to attract. And na can mean two things according to the acharyas. These are acharyas' definitions of the word Krishna. Na means ananda. Ananda means bliss, just like it's described here, Ramante Yumane Namate, Satchananda Chidatmane. And also means, na means negation of pavarga. Pavarga is the symptoms of living in this material world, like pa, ma, parishama, what is that, foaming at the mouth, hard work, ultimately vaya, death. So it negates the material suffering. So you get ananda, attraction, ananda, and negating the material suffering. For those of you who are young, you may not believe that this material world is a place of suffering, although Krishna does state it. Dukalyama Shashvatam, and also Brahma Bhupana Loka, Prana Bharati Navarjuna, Mama Vetya, Dukantya, Buddham Janmana Vidyate. Because due to our exposure to the media, exposure to the propaganda, we have young people usually have these unrealistic expectations about the material world, isn't it? Especially, romantic expectations or financial expectations or whatever. So this is called an unrealistic expectation. But our expectations of Krishna consciousness are not unrealistic. They're actually very realistic. One can experience Kevalananda Kanda Bhaja Bhaja Vai Chaitanya unlimited happiness, and that's what's being described here. So that's the word Krishna, Krishna. And then Hare, of course, refers to Srimati Radharani in the evocative form. One should remember this when they're chanting the holy names. Actually, there's many things you can think of, which I'll mention in a second. But Hare, evocative means you're crying out. Oh, just like in English, we don't have a vocative sense in our language. We have to add a word like oh. Like if I'm crying out for Yogendra, I'll say, oh, Yogendra! But there's not a specific tense that you could say. You could just conjugate the word Yogendra. Like Yogendrasthana or something like that. No, you couldn't do that. You have to say, oh. So Hare is, oh, Radharani, crying out. It's actually crying out.
How do they do that? Do you know how they do that? Is there a certain thing about Sanskrit?
Yeah, there's a certain thing about Sanskrit. There's many different tenses and conjugations and different things in Sanskrit, much more than English. I mean, English is very limited. Even it's more limited than most of the languages in the world. Just like if you speak a foreign language, like I speak Spanish, for example, then you actually have different tenses in Spanish that you don't have in English, and also in Hindi too. It's the same thing. And you also, for example, in Spanish, as in many languages, objects actually have a gender. In English, generally not. Sometimes a boat, you can say a boat is a she or something like that. But generally, in English, you don't say, just say the chair. You don't say, the chair is a lady or the chair is a man or something like that. So English is a very simple language, which Prabhupada described as a language for business. Every language has a particular utility to it. Prabhupada said, English is a language for business, French is a language for love. They're actually called French, Spanish, Portuguese. They're all called Romance languages. Did you know that?
Yeah.
They're called Romance languages. And Prabhupada said, German sounds like barking dogs. Sorry if I offend anybody who speaks German here. And anyway, so Sanskrit is actually a very precise language. Anyway, so Hare is Radharani, but oh, Srimati Radharani, oh, energy of the Lord, the Shakti. Radharani is called the Adi Shakti, the original potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Adi Shakti, that's the name of Radharani. Also, Ladini Shakti is another name of Srimati Radharani. Actually, there's thousands, millions of names of Srimati Radharani. So you're saying, oh, Radharani, engage me in the energy of serving Krishna. In this way, I will become attracted to Krishna and enjoy unlimitedly. Think about that when you're chanting. It's not just like a ritual. And then, of course, Ram is described here in this verse that's from the Padma Purana. The mystics describe unlimited transcendental pleasure from the absolute truth, and therefore the supreme absolute truth, the personality of God, is known as Rama. In other words, Rama is the supreme enjoyer, and you could enjoy also by serving Rama. And also, there was this whole discussion that devotees used to have, is Rama Lord Ram, is Rama Lord Balaram? And Prabhupada answered, both. Because Ram is an expansion of Krishna, Balaram is an expansion of Krishna, and Balaram is the first expansion of Krishna, and Ram is certainly an expansion of Balaram. So there's no difference. Advaita, Chuta, Nadir, Anantarupam, Adyam, Purana, Purusham, Navayoganam, Cha. As the Brahma Samhita states, the Supreme Lord has multifarious forms. They're all Supreme Personality of God. They're all Advaita. They're all the same person. So, and also another meaning, essentially, another meaning the Acharyas give to the word Rama is Radha Raman. Did you know that?
No.
Something new for you. Radha Raman means the enjoyer of Srimati Radharani. It's pretty nice. Anyway, so enough meaning of the holy name. So within the holy name and within the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are the complete attributes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the glorification of the Lord, which is mentioned here, is unlimited. And there's two aspects of the glorification of the Lord. One can glorify the Lord in terms of his transcendental qualities, and one can glorify the Lord in terms of his creation, too. For example, this morning, I was walking to the temple, and I had a unique experience. And it's not some internal love or anything I'm doing. So I had a unique experience. I saw the sky, because, where I come from, you don't see stars. I'm very unfortunate. Sometimes you see the moon, you don't see the moon, but not really crisp in the air. Like you look up here in New Talavana and you see all the firmament. Isn't it amazing?
Very distinct.
And you see even the planet like Venus and Mars, because wow, it's like I haven't seen this before. I was just remembering my childhood. So looking at the sky, I was just thinking how amazing Krishna is. And this is also glorification of Krishna. Like in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is called the opulence of the Absolute, it's called Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhuti means the greatness. Vibhu. Vibhu means something very great. Anu means something very small. So the 10th chapter of the Gita, you have Krishna's glory is described in terms of material creation. Now these are not transcendental factors, but they are manifestations of Krishna. For example, you find movable things on the Himalayas, aquatics, and the shark, so don't stick your head in the mouth of a shark, and then this way you're worshiping Krishna, because it's Krishna's energies. But it's also glorification of Krishna to understand, because it helps one understand the greatness of God. For example, in the Bhagavatam, there's so many descriptions of the creation and other things that, are not directly the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, but these are all for glorifying the Supreme Lord. Another example, apart from my looking at the sky in the morning, thinking how great Krishna is, another example is right now I'm doing some investigation into what's called intelligent design. I don't know if any of you heard about this before, but which means that proof, more or less proof, what's called inference by the best explanation. That's a technical term. I'm not going to get into it. But more or less proof that this material world is designed. So we look at the structure of the cell, for example, and we see so many different things. Of course, primarily I'm going to talk about DNA right now. Like you see DNA, which is basically a computer code. Yeah, it's actually a computer code that describes the design, at least partially the design of the body. There's actually other things. It's really interesting. That there's other factors in the design of the body. The scientists don't know where the code is coming from. But most of it is coming from DNA. And this DNA is actually a computer code. There was one, let's say, a computer scientist who works for Microsoft. I think everyone's heard of Microsoft. One computer scientist who works for Microsoft, he was looking at the code, the DNA code, which is composed of four letters actually, but it's in different sequences. He was looking at this because he was trying to make a computer simulation of DNA. He was working for some biologist, and he said, "Hey, they're using the same techniques we use in Microsoft." He said, this comes right out of the manual of computer coding. Like that. But he said it's infinitely more sophisticated than any program we've ever written. Infinitely more sophisticated than any program. Think about that for a second. And, that sort of proves that someone designed the thing.
Did he actually use the term they? They're using... You said
no, he didn't say they're using, but he said in this code that he was actually analyzing, they're using the same techniques that comes right out of the manual, the programming manual. So obviously, and then you also look at the system of replication of the information in the DNA. Where the DNA is carried, information is carried by the RNA anyway. And if there is some mistake in the replication or duplication, you also have an error-correcting mechanism built in there. Just like in that, when you're typing on a computer, if you type out Krishna wrong, it'll say, no, that's not Krishna. And also, the more you investigate this material energy, the more you become convinced that there's a God. Another point about DNA is, just like if you have, if you have a headphones for your cell phone, some of you may have that. If you put them in your pocket, what happens after a while? Anyone know? With the wires. They get tangled, they get knots. Don't they? It's just like, when I first discovered that, I was angry. I said, who has made knots in my wires? But it's just like, the material energy, it just gets knots. So because it's sitting there and, just like folding up in different ways. So the DNA also, these DNA strands, sometimes they become knotted. But it doesn't work if they become knotted. So what happens? There's a little mechanism, a cellular mechanism, that cuts them and joins them back. A little machine. You know, a protein machine that cuts them and joins them back in the right sequence. Can you
By
imagine?
chance? Just by chance.
Is that a separate cell? I mean, what is it?
It's in the cell. It's not a
In the
separate
cell.
cell. It's a protein molecule. That's
Wow.
it. But so, you know, you look at these things, and it's amazing. And then you got people like, you know, like Richard Dawkins, you know, whatever. I'm not going to mention it. I just did mention it. Who say that it just happened by chance, you know. You know, you look at that level, which is, you know, the nano level base. It's a nano level because when Darwin, I guess I wasn't planning to speak about these things, but it works into the class. When Darwin was actually writing his, you know, Origin of the Species book, they didn't have the mechanisms to examine in the intercellular level. You know, just in the last 70 years that we've had like electron microscopes, scanning electron microscopes and other things like that, so people can see into what's happening inside the cell. You know, previously, it was just thought that the cell is just one massive cytoplasm. That's it, you know, it's just like Jell-O. Just like, you know what Jell-O is? We used to eat it when we were young. Of course, it has some unfortunate things in it, like horse hooves. But there's vegetarian Jell-O too. You can make it out of agar dough. So that's what the thought was. But then you go into matter, into organic matter, and you see this extreme complexity in computer programming. And you know, the logical explanation is when you see a computer program, is that someone designed it, right? That's the logical explanation, you know. You know, to think that it happened by chance is not the first explanation you would come out with. But you have these atheists rejecting it. So, I mean, of course, Darwin wasn't privy to all this information. So you have to give him the benefit of the doubt. That if he was, he probably would have changed his whole theory. I mean, there's some aspects of Darwin's theory that are true. There's natural variations between members of a particular species, but not from one species to another. You know, just like when it gets very cold here in New Talavana, you know, those people who have bodies that are adapted to the cold will probably do better than those people who are not adapted to the cold. You know, just like life. That's survival of the fittest. So anyways, and then you just look at the other aspects of that. I don't want to get into the whole thing, but it just helps you like appreciate Krishna. I was thinking like that this morning during Mangalarti. I said, wow, Krishna is so amazing. I mean, the stars in the sky, the things happening in the atoms. And then the whole time he's just enjoying in Goloka Even Vashati Akilat Naguta. He's just dancing with the gopis. Can you imagine that? I mean, if I have to work on designing something very simple, of course I don't dance with gopis. But I don't have time for recreation. If I'm if I'm engaged in some activity, Krishna consciousness, or I'm just, sometimes I make a PowerPoint to illustrate some philosophical point for class. I don't have time for anything else. But Krishna's doing all these things simultaneously. Talk about the material energy, it's amazing. But simultaneously he's enjoying and he's on vacation. Like Prabhupada said, one time he was driving with Amarish Prabhu, who was Henry Ford's great-grandson. They were driving past the Ford Motor Company in Detroit. And one devotee asked Amarish, "So you work here?" And Prabhupada said, "No, he's the proprietor." So in other words, he's able to do everything, I guess, through his money, but whatever, without working. So Krishna, Krishna doesn't have to work. And it's all going on just by his desire. So it's not that Krishna is sitting down in some laboratory designing the DNA and the RNA and the stars, you know, with a paintbrush. Let's put a star here. He's just enjoying. So, therefore, Krishna says in the Gita, in the 6th chapter, it's 30, Yomam pashati sarvatra sarum chamai pashati tasham apanishami sachame nam pranashati. That basically, one should see him in everything and see him everywhere. Actually, Krishna says in the negative there, in positive. One who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me is never lost to me, nor am I ever lost to him. It's one of the really important verses in the Gita, 6:30, for those who want to learn a verse. So, in other words, everything should remind us of Krishna, of the glories of Krishna. You know, well, anything we see, where's a chair, I mean, it's exquisite design. I'm not talking about the chair design itself, but let's say the design of the wood. You know, just look at wood, it's so amazing, isn't it? So everything should just like, whatever we see should be an impetus for love of Krishna. And this is how a devotee sees. It's not that he simply concentrates on the Rasa Leela, or the intimate pastimes of Krishna, because everything reminds him of Krishna. Premanjana churiti bhakti vilochane santak sadaiva vidiyeshu vilokyantu yamishayma shundram chunchi gunas varupam govinamani purasham tamaham bhajami. So that's another verse from the Brahma Samhita, that one has eyes of love, that everything reminds him of his beloved, which is Krishna, or her beloved, which is Krishna. Just like if you, I mean, just like if one's engaged a lot in deity worship, I'll give a practical example. Then you go to a shopping mall and you see jewelry. What does it remind you of?
What you can buy for the
What you can buy for the deities. And that's also part of Yukta Vairagya. So it just reminds you. And then so everything becomes an impetus. Everything becomes a vibhava. Let's explain what a vibhava is. So bhava means emotion. A vibhava means things that stimulate your emotion. This is part of the analysis given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the Madhurya Kadambini. So with devotees, or advanced devotees, pure devotees, at least devotees, you know, on a little higher level, they have these vibhavas. So vibhava means two parts of vibhava. You don't have to remember these words. In alambana and udipana. Alambana means directly Krishna. You know, Krishna. Udipana means things that are related to Krishna. Like the story of the Chaitanya Charitamrita about Mukunda. He was a great devotee, and he was a medical man, and he was giving advice to the Muslim leader. And as he was giving advice to the Muslim Nawab, that's the boss, someone came up and started fanning the Muslim Nawab with a peacock fan. And as soon as he saw that peacock fan, or the peacocks in the peacock fan, peacock feathers, he fainted. And he just fell off the dais to the ground. And this Muslim, he came down and said, "What's the problem?" And Mukunda, you know, not wanting to reveal his internal ecstasy, said, "Oh, I have epilepsy." But the Muslim understood this was a sign of love of God. Because it reminds, that's called a udipana, which means indirectly reminds you of Krishna. It may not be, it's not Krishna directly. Like if you see a flute, you hear a flute song. One time I was at Govardhan, and they have a speaker system around where I live, and they were playing, somebody was playing the flute. And I just thought, wow, I've become completely Krishna conscious now. Hearing Krishna's flute, wow. Prabhupada was right, you know, I've achieved perfection. But then I realized it was just some rascal playing a flute. Anyways, maybe it was a devotee, I have to be careful. But anyway, so in other words, everything reminds us of Krishna. And so the Bhagavatam, there's nothing but Krishna in the Bhagavatam. So the point of us hearing all these descriptions, like of the creation of the universe. You know, some people think, oh, I've heard about the creation of the universe before. You know, there's Mahavishnu, oh my God. Oh, yes, he's God. So he breathes out, the universe has come out, and like bubbles, they expand. There's the Garbhodaya Krishna, and the Shirodaya Vishnu, and then Lord Brahma, and the Prajapati, and Daksha with his nonsense sometimes. And you hear others going, oh, let's get on to the nectar. But it's all nectar. It's all nectar because it's Krishna. Everything, Krishna is everywhere. And that's like Krishna says in the Gita verse that I just quoted. Seeing Krishna everywhere and everything in Krishna. It's all nectar. And, you know, some devotees, they think, I just want to hear about the pastimes of Krishna and Vrindavan and these other incarnations. Well, they're okay. But Jayadeva Goswami, in his Gita Govinda, which is such an elevated book that we're not qualified to read it, he has his Dasha Avatar Shloka. That's, you know, the chanting that we do every day about Lord Nrsimhadev, you know, Kesava Drita, Narahari Rupa, Jayajagati Shahari. So Jayadeva Goswami is glorifying the avatars in the middle of the Gita Govinda. And the Gita Govinda is so elevated. There's an interesting story in the Gita, when he was writing the Gita Govinda. Jayadeva Goswami, one time, he started to think he should write a verse that says that Krishna bows down and touches Radharani's feet. And he was thinking, boy, this is too much. That can't be. So he went away to take a bath. In the meantime, Krishna came and he finished that verse. Dressed, you know, putting on the guise or the disguise of Jayadeva Goswami. And then Krishna took prasadam from Jayadeva Goswami's wife, Padmavati. And so then Jayadeva Goswami comes back and he says to his wife, where's prasadam? And she said, you already ate. Hope you're not getting senile. You already ate. And he said, no, I didn't eat. And she said, yes, you ate and you continued writing in your book. And he went to the book and he found this verse. Krishna bows down and touches Radharani's feet to beg forgiveness, of course. This is really interesting. Anyway, so the point is Jayadeva Goswami was on the topmost elevated platform of devotional service, and it's his literatures that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enjoyed reading every day. The Gita Govinda, and also very few other literatures. You know, Bilvamangal Thakur's books, Jayadeva Goswami, and some of the other acharyas. And he was the one who glorified Kesava Drita Narahari Rupa, Kesava Drita Shukara Rupa, Kesava Drita Haladara Rupa, all these different incarnations of the Lord, because Kesava Drita. Kesava Drita means that Kesava, that's Krishna, with long black hair. You've taken on that particular pastime. So you love someone, you love everything they do, right? No? We're not talking about your wife. Here. Actually, I have to be honest too. One thing I don't like is that Lord Ramsingh Sita away. Yeah, I have to be honest. There's certain things I don't like. But anyway, I mean, I appreciate. I'm not saying. If I had to do the past, arrange the past, I'd tell Lord Ram to do it a little differently. But I understand the esoteric nature of the pastime. So the point is, we love Krishna. And, he's created the material world, Maya. Maya also means like mercy. It's a great place. Because if it wasn't a place like this, we'd be stuck in limbo. And I'm not talking about the limbo where you're going to the limbo stick, Anyway, none of you know what that is. So we'd be stuck in some in-between, unconscious plane. Because we didn't want to be in the spiritual world. So Krishna's, it's great, the material world. Isn't it? I mean, not great for you if you want to try to enjoy it. But if you want to use it in Christian service and use it in impetus to become a Christian content, the material world is fantastic. So, anyway, so the material world is Krishna's mercy. So in this particular verse, it mentions the word, which is interesting, rasavit. Rasavit. Vit means to know, actually. Here, I believe it translates it as appreciate, but it also it means to. Here it is. Rasavit, expert in relishing mellow nectar. So mellow nectar, rasa means taste, of course, which most of you know. Vit means the knower or the expert in relishing this. So this is how the devotee should be. Expert in relishing the mellow nectar. Of course, mellow means, a taste. There's different tastes. It's like we have different tastes when we're eating, right? There's a salty taste, which I don't get, except by the mercy of some other devotees who try to do it to me. But there's a salty, the sweet taste, there's a bitter taste. And Krishna he's also Rasadya, which means the knower of Rasa. Rasa Raj, he's the king of Rasa. There's a different name of Krishna in reference to Ras. It's pronounced Rus, not Ras, but anyway. Rus. And so devotees should be the enjoyers of appreciating Krishna's Ras, or activities, which includes the material world. So this is the point here. So, any questions or comments?
I was thinking, you mentioned about wood. The other day was the first time we used the stove. And it, always the beginning of the year, it always amazes me that energy, the fire, has been stored in there by Krishna. It's the sun being released. The wood has been, has stored this energy, and now it's being released for our benefit. And that's one of the mystical parts of the creation that we just take for granted. Oh, wood burns, but why? Why is there fire coming out?
Yeah, it's stored as potential energy. Right. And but even I wouldn't say more amazing, but just as amazing is how you take the food and the fire of digestion. Right. The food gets transmuted. It's different. The elements become transmuted within the body, which the scientists, they have a hard time doing that. Transmute, just like, for example, science of alchemy, transmuting bell metal or lead to gold and things like that. The body can do that. Prabhupada described the process. You want to know the process?
Yeah, I know.
The process is you drink mercury. And then you urinate on the lead or the bell metal the next day. Of course, you have to drink a sufficient quantity of mercury that you're dead. So you have to be a yogi. Don't try it at home. But the yogis, they could utilize the body to transmute one element to another. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
I've seen that some scientists have actually done it in a lab.
Yeah.
But the amount of energy they use produced
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth it. Whereas the human body can transmute, the food, turning the food to energy. I mean, how does let's see, a split monk become, this, waving my hands?
Right.
Huh? I mean, it's just amazing. And Krishna designed all this.
Do you remember, like say in the 50s or the 60s, occasionally on Sunday mornings they would show this sort of animated scientific explanation of how the body works, and they'd have these little people that were inside.
Yeah.
They were doing the functions like it was a factory or something. Do you remember seeing that at all?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a vague memory for me too. But in other words, but it's like demigods, really. is what it really comes down to, you know.
Yeah.
But that was it, you know, and it was interesting they were doing it on Sunday morning. They're sort of presenting some kind of mechanical explanation of, instead of all this is happening under God's mercy. You know, so.
I mean, the body is amazing. I mean, one cell is amazing. One cell is more complex than all the human factories on the Earth planet, all the cities on the Earth planet.
Isn't it true that one of the founders who brought to us the knowledge of the DNA code or something, there was two men, they won Nobel Prize.
Crick and the other guy.
Yeah, and he...
What?
Watson and Crick.
Watson and Crick.
And one of them said to think that this happened after whatever 800 billion years from primordial ooze is like saying that after a Category 5 hurricane, a 747 would be sitting in your front yard.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they realized that there had to be some designer behind it. I mean, that's the logical inference for the most probable explanation. You know, you can't prove it. Like an ultimate proof, you can't prove because you can't see God doing it. But
not true.
But science is based upon inference. I'll explain what I mean by that. Let's say the scientists analyze these different signals coming in the radio telescopes from the sky and the regular telescopes and whatever other instruments they have. They're not actually seeing what's happening. They're not actually directly there in some star that's 10 billion light years away. But they're taking the evidence that's coming and making an inference from it. For example, there's many different inferences in the universe done about dark matter or dark energy, and of course there's discussions whether it actually exists. I mean, that's a whole other scientific discussion. But that's scientific, to make inferences from different information that they obtain. So when you have a lot of information and you make the most logical inference from it, that's science. That's how science functions, right? Anyone object to that?
No.
So it's scientific to say that the most likely scenario by far is that everything is designed. The only way you can't prove a transcendental thing using material, empirical tools. But you can draw an inference that is infinitely most likely to have occurred. And you can draw an inference and state that something is practically impossible to have occurred, which is, by chance. And our godbrother Sadaputa Prabhu, he analyzed this utilizing what's called information theory. Whether or not something like one element in a cell could have come about, one cell life form could have come about by chance during the lifespan of the whole universe. And with such an infinitesimal number, using scientific notation, which most of you don't know about. Scientific notation means 10 to the negative something power. So it's like 10 to the negative, almost like infinite number power that it could have happened. In other words, when something is so unlikely to have happened, then you say, basically, it was impossible. For all intents and purposes, it was impossible. It's likely if enough monkeys are typing away that they'll come out with the works of Shakespeare? No. That's the example they use in the university when they teach you about probability theory. That if you have enough monkeys typing away at enough typewriters for enough years, you're going to get the works of William Shakespeare. And the probability is so small But the works of William Shakespeare are not infinitely complex. But the works of God are infinitely complex. The works of oneself are infinitely complex. You know, it's like unlimited numbers of the works of Shakespeare. So, yeah.
They say there is something called the Akashic Record,
Yeah.
and would you infer, can it be inferred that they are using their intelligence to construct the superconducting super collider to try and perceive an Akashic record?
I don't know what they're trying to do. Yeah, well, they're trying to understand the different particles, you know, the God particle, and which they've already discovered, what they call the God particle.
Yeah.
Who, you know, ultimately they'll just keep discovering more and more particles, and but the conclusion that the scientists, you know, intelligent scientists have come to, is that when you examine the different ratios in nature, the different forces, and the how they interact with each other, it's been designed. I mean, you can understand design or more or less prove the existence of God, or say that by an inference there must be a God, just by looking at the different ratios of the energies and what's called the cosmic constants. You can use that word. The cosmic constants, you know, the forces within the universe, between, you know, gravity, electromagnetism, and all these other, and the weak and the strong. I'm not going to describe what I mean by those, but you can. It's so finely tuned. All these constants in atomic matter, and also, you know, between the planets, are also finely tuned so the universe actually functions. And that's on the cosmological level. And of course, on the cellular level, you can see the same thing. I mean, all these are different proofs of the existence of God. Now, it's interesting, I was just reading a letter that Einstein wrote. Now, not a devotee of Einstein, but he did understand a lot of things. And he was criticizing, he wasn't an atheist, but he was criticizing religion that he knew. You know, I don't want to criticize, but he was criticizing the Middle Eastern religions, which, you know, Christianity, Judaism. He says that the explanations he finds are very, very primitive. And of course, you know, he was exposed to the Gita, and he did appreciate the Gita, but anyway, but Einstein, I believe that ultimately Einstein was a theist, although he has some letters in which apparently it appears that he wasn't. But, you know, after examining the universe, examining the cosmological constants, examining everything, one has to come to the conclusion it's God, and one has to just really appreciate the designer. To me, I mean, looking up in the sky reminds me of Govinda. Looking at anything reminds me of Govinda. Even when I look in the mirror, it reminds me of Govinda. Why? Because it reminds me of the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, birth, death, disease, and old age. Isn't it?
No. I used to have black hair.
You know, sometimes you look in the mirror and you think, who's that old person they put a picture of in the bathroom? And then I realize it's me. So, any other questions? You had a question?
This when you were speaking, Maharaj, it reminded me of a pastime that Mukunda Maharaj relates in his book, Miracle on 26th Avenue, that when they were in the Haight-Ashbury and had started the temple there, then someone arranged that Prabhupada go speak, and at some head shop they had like a meditation room, and so the devotees were accompanying Prabhupada to that place, and Mukunda, then Prabhu, he felt so bad that Prabhupada was being subjected to all that, like people passed out on the street and half clothed and how like horrific it was, and so he was trying to, you know, make some apology, and Prabhupada said, oh no, everything is beautiful. That's what it means to be Krishna conscious, is to see everything in relation to Krishna and his beautiful.
Yeah, Prabhupada's all like that. Other times Prabhupada commented on the modes of nature. You know, another time Prabhupada said, this is the dark, you call it, this is the darkest of the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just heard something a little contrary to that, where he started out, he said, first I started out and it was part chanting, and what I was seeing around me was, you know, from the point of view of the Vaishnava, this was, you know, subhuman activities going on around. And slowly, 1 or 2 nice boys and girls came, and 5 and 10, and now it's my duty, Krishna sent them to train them.
Yeah. This is, Prabhupada was always, seeing Krishna means also Shastra Chakshush.
Yes.
You know, seeing things through the eyes of Shastra, seeing the mode of ignorance, the modes of nature, actually. And actually in the Bhagavad Gita it describes that a devotee could sometimes see just the modes of nature, right, within the material world. So there's different ways a pure devotee, or any devotee, can see and see Krishna everywhere.
I think maybe, you know, the logical conclusion would be that how Prabhupada is just seeing all these souls as candidates for Lord Chaitanya's mercies.
Oh yeah.
In that way, that he was seeing their beauty. Their
Yeah, Prabhupada was extremely merciful. He was just like overcome by mercy. I mean, I'm certainly not like that. One time, devotees invited me to go to a rainbow festival to preach, and I walked into it, didn't walk, I hiked into the rainbow festival. It was in Wyoming. And I went in, and people were not wearing clothes or anything like that. So I just said, get me out of here. Whereas other devotees stayed, they were able to preach nicely.
You know, I was listening to actually this morning after I finished chanting, they had a loop on Murli Kirti, and she was telling these pastimes about before Prabhupada came to America, and there was a writers club of Sanskrit writers in Vrindavan, and Prabhupada would go, and he was asking them he had the 3 volumes, and he was asking them to bless him because he was going to bring it across the ocean. And that, you know, this was meant he would lose his caste to them. They thought this was inappropriate. And so he was asking them for their blessings that he could bring this message. You know, they were saying, they did ultimately bless the book and bless him to do this, but they kept saying, you're going to lose your caste. This is a fall down. You know, so he was being advised, but he was, you know, on one side, but then being pushed on another by the super succession.
By the order of his guru.
Yeah, exactly.
By the order of his guru. Prabhupada showed himself to be the greatest devotee because objectively he had the most faith in the order of his guru. Yeah. That order was given to many of Prabhupada's godbrothers, but Prabhupada showed that he had 100% faith in the order. Okay, I think we have to end.
If you give a small advertisement for your 2 books that you brought, maybe some devotees will want them, you know?
Advertisement means, but now discounted for today only for the next 10 minutes.
Limited supply.
There is a limited supply. Limited supply, there's 2 books which are in the bookstore here.
I'm not my body. That one is in my office. The other book is...
Well, you're not your body. The name of the book is You're Not the Body.
You're not the body.
Yeah. The name of the book is not I'm Not the Body. Anyway, so, yeah. You're Not the Body.
Yeah.
And realizing our empathic connection, nature connected to Krishna. That's here.
That's it.
Okay, so yeah, Realizing Our Empathic Nature Connected to Krishna is a book about empathy and connection and communication between devotees and understanding others, etc. Quite an interesting book, and it's written with a lot of quotes from Prabhupada and the Vedic literatures. So it's not just speculation. Oh, here it is. Who wrote that? Okay, anyway. So, there's a picture of Radharani on it. That's our deities in North Carolina, Radharani in North Carolina. And it's an easy read. Actually, it's quite easy. And a lot of it teaches you how to raise children. If you don't have children, maybe you're not interested in it. But I'll tell you something. An advertisement, you want a full advertisement? Talks about empathy, tolerance, compassion, surrendering to the temple president. Oh no. Giving all your money to the temple president. No, don't talk about that. Emotions, judgmental language, domination culture, independence, interdependence, the needs, blocks of communication, how to say no. Wow, there's a whole chapter, seriously, there's a whole chapter, how to say no. We should all learn how to say no. How to control anger, that's pretty good. How to deal with anger. And has some things at the end which are really interesting about gratitude and appreciation. If you go to Lanka, you will become Ravana. Varnashram, how does Varnashram fit in? And we end with a chapter called All You Need Is Love. Right from the Beatles. No, actually that chapter is very important because I show through scientific studies that if one has loving relationships, they're going to live on the average of 6 to 15 years longer. There's actually scientific studies. We're not just speculating about this. For example, there is a study done at Harvard, a prominent university. 126 men were chosen. I guess they didn't choose any ladies. Were chosen, asked about the closeness of the relationship with the parents. Then they followed up 35 years later with the same men. 91 of the participants who stated they did not have a warm relationship with their mothers had serious illnesses like heart disease, high blood pressure, ulcers, alcoholism, and chanting Hare Krishna. Oh no, that's not good. I'm just adding that to keep everybody awake. Amongst those who had a warm relationship with the mothers, only 45% had those diseases. Wow. In other words, practically half. Another thing, 100% of those who rated their relationships with mothers and fathers low, I guess Krishna's telling me something. 100% of those who rated their relationships low with both of them, mothers and fathers, had the aforementioned types of disease, only 47%. Wow. In another Harvard study, just to finish it was concluded that the best predictor of who would get cancer later on in life was based on the nature of the father-son relationships in childhood and youth. Pretty heavy. I mean, this is a Harvard, these are scientific studies. And I'm not decrying science. Science actually has a place. Anyway, so, interesting stuff. Yeah.
But it seems that all of that can be changed when you come to Krishna consciousness and you have a spiritual father like Srila Prabhupada.
Oh, of course.
Radharani and Krishna and spiritual master.
Yeah, the point I'm making is not that, you're doomed or anything like that. But we need to have those relationships somehow or other. I mean, even if one didn't have them when they were young, then in Krishna consciousness, it's important for us to have those relationships. And that will actually overcome past deficiencies. And also there's another thing about social isolation. In Finland, they studied 13,000 people. It showed, in a study, over a 5 to 9 year period, men who were socially isolated had 2 to 3 times increased rate of death. That's a 200 or 300% increased rate of death. So, stay in the association of devotees, but loving relationships. I mean, this all feeds into, dati pratigurnati guya makyati prichati. You shouldn't think, because I can have a good relationship with my parents, and I'm doomed. It's not like that. The point is that you can make up for it. Thank you for raising that point. You can make up for it. But you got to make up for it. You can't just socially isolate yourself and have horrible relationships and be criticizing people all the time. What do you expect? Physically, there's going to be some repercussions.
How much is it, Maharaj?
$200. No. You have to negotiate with Yogendra.
Oh, is it another place?
Well, it has a price on it, doesn't it? That's
Yeah.
$10, doesn't it?
That's a lot. Anyway, $10 is it.
Not a lot.
It's not so
It's not a lot.
What's the other book about, Maharaj?
The other book is it's a preaching book. It's called You're Not the Body, and there's nice pictures in it of cartoons, actually, illustrating the 32 most important points in Krishna consciousness.
Madhava Priya drew the cartoon, didn't he?
Yeah, she drew it with cartoons. Wonderful illustrations of Madhava Priya. The whole philosophy of, the essential items in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness in a nutshell for preaching.
And it's just a $2 book.
Just a $2 book. I don't know how much he's charging. I'm not making any money because I'm so merciful. I sold him to Yogendra and he's making a profit. So, which he hasn't paid me. So, all right. So, we'll take a book back. And if you run out, I have a lot more that I can send you
Okay.
of either book. I mean, I have an unlimited quantity of the empathic book. By unlimited, because we do print on demand.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I mean?
If people want, they can just go to Amazon.
Oh, yeah, it's on Amazon.
The book. Can they get the I'm Not the Body book on Amazon?
Maybe, I'm not sure. It's not print on demand. Amazon is not print on demand. I mean, You're Not the Body is not print on demand.
Mm-hmm.
That was done. We printed a limited quantity of that. But the Realizing Your Empathic Nature Connected to Krishna is print on demand. They go to Amazon.com and just look up the name of the book.
You can order it right from there.
Yeah, and if they have Prime, they get free delivery.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. I'm not interested in making money from books. It has to be dissemination of knowledge. Okay.
John.